is Bradley Bullag-Miller, and I use he, him, his pronouns. I will be a rising senior this upcoming year, graduating with the class of 2021. And I am an art major, specifically integrative design and architecture. So that's kind of where I'm oriented. And I am currently residing in Vermont with my family, and I've been here all of quarantine. So.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself now?
Yeah, so I'm Kristen Bukowski. I use feminine pronouns, and I'm based in Fort Collins, Colorado. I graduated from CC in 2011, and I was a studio major with a focus in weaving and printmaking. And I am currently teaching, I'm an adjunct professor at multiple universities in Colorado.
Would you mind just talking a little bit about what you do and maybe some of the themes of your work and just anything that kind of embodies what your practice is?
Sure. Well, aside from teaching, my art practice is primarily weaving. I do a lot of drawing and sketching as well, but I'm primarily working on the loom. And for my art practice, right now I'm just really focused on color. And so I've been gathering colors from my garden, and I've been doing a lot of natural dyes. So I try to grow plants that I can dye with, and I've just kind of been exploring color.
Is that kind of something that you were exploring in college, and what sort of made you interested in like kind of integrating your garden and natural
I wasn't gardening in college, so I grew up in Iowa, and I didn't garden at all because there was tons of poison ivy, and I get contact dermatitis really easily. So as soon as I would touch a plant, I would break out in hives, just because of the types of plants that were growing there. But in Colorado, we have a much drier environment, and so I started off growing vegetables when I moved to Fort Collins, and then from there I've been growing, aside from my veggie garden, lots of native flowers and things that I can dye with. But at CC, my work was, I was really inspired by some of the major fiber artists like Sheila Hicks and Annie Albers, and I was really interested in weaving's kind of on a grid. Everything's kind of interlocked like this. So I was looking at architecture for inspiration because I was seeing that those kind of grid-like structures that reminded me of weavings.
Oh, fascinating. Well, quick question, side question. Do you have any tips for like natural dyeing ingredients that are easily grown in Colorado? Because I know that I know some students that are particularly interested in doing stuff in that climate, and so like kind of specific to what's conducive to growing there.
Probably the easiest thing to grow is Coreopsis, Plains Coreopsis. It's a wildflower, and it's native to the US, and so it's really easy to grow. You just kind of sprinkle the seeds and it'll come up. And it looks a little bit like a weed when it first starts growing, but then it has these really kind of dainty orange flowers. You get kind of this color from it.
Oh, wow.
And it's really easy to grow.
Wow.
And the marigolds are another one that are, they're a great garden companion plant as well. A lot of gardeners use it to deter pests, and then the flowers give you a really kind of green gold color.
Oh, awesome. Do you have like a do you feel like you gravitate towards like certain color schemes, or do you go through like phases where you're
I definitely go through phases. Yeah. I'm right now I'm doing a lot of pinks. I just picked a bunch of radishes, and they're these like kind of fuchsia color, and so I'm actually weaving right now kind of a radish theme piece, which I can show you if I can get my computer up. So that's my loom right now.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm doing kind of a radish fuchsia That's not a natural dye though. That one was a dye from fiber active dyes, which is a synthetic dye I learned to use at CC.
Oh.
Yeah.
How much time do you think that you've kind of spent sort of developing new colors in relation to how much time you're kind of spending weaving and thinking of new patterns? And
Well, a lot. I do a lot of sketching, and so often I'll just be sketching based on color. So I'll pull, these are all Helen Frankenthaler pieces. And so I'll pull colors from a garden or from a painting as inspiration. And then I'm usually just giving myself some plaids to work with, since that's really conducive to weaving. And so I can see how those colors might interact on the loom.
Wait, so how do you pull those colors out of the pictures? Do you kind of mix, like make your own mixing them, or?
That was just markers. So I was just mixing with markers, but I'll use color pencils or oil pastels to mix colors. And it kind of translates to dye work, but you have to be a little bit more creative with the dyes you use because it's not as direct. Often a dye will look one color in the dye pot and then will dry a different color. So you have to kind of know what to expect from just practice.
Got it. Interesting. So you mentioned that you'd kind of draw from sort of your garden and the natural world and then also architecture. And I'm particularly interested in that because I'm sort of architecture oriented. And so I'm kind of curious, how does architecture play a role in that? And like, does that, like, do you feel like you're paying particular attention when you're in different built environments and looking for patterns? Or do you feel like when you're weaving, you kind of get new insights into like different forms? Or how does kind of architecture play a role in that?
Yeah, architecture has been a big inspiration in my work. Once I started weaving, I was really focused on the line quality of it and like the texture you get from that grid. And so I would see those lines in architecture, and I was really inspired by the connection between weaving and architecture, especially when you're on the loom. When you're on the loom, your weaving is very rigid and has a lot of structure to it. And then there's kind of an interesting shift once you take your work off of the loom, where it's very fluid because it's a piece of cloth. And so it kind of loses. I'll start with this like really strong line in mind from architecture, but it definitely is a translation that changes once you get your piece off the loom.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many interesting lines in architecture, so it and geometry, and it's fun to translate that to cloth.
Yeah. What kind of inspired you to start pursuing fiber arts? And yeah, I guess just talk about like your introduction to that and what made you kind of pursue that as your profession.
I took fibers I think it was sophomore or my sophomore summer at CC. I think it was block C or block B. I can't quite remember, but I took it from Jean Steiner, who headed the arts and crafts program, and I think she just retired. But she's really inspired my whole career. I learned how to weave from Jean, and I just wanted to keep weaving once I learned how to do it. And I spent so much time in the arts and crafts building or arts and crafts center below Warner, and just loved being at the loom, loved the whole environment. And then my senior year, the looms, they did some remodeling down there, and so they actually moved the looms into the Packard building for senior year. Yeah, it was really interesting. So it was kind of nice to be able to look out on Pikes Peak and weave.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. That's kind of shattering though, because I was kind of planning on taking weaving with or fiber arts with Jean this summer, and then coronavirus ruined it, and now she's retired. So
yeah,
It's really sad,
Well,
but
never know. She might teach a workshop or something. If you get the
yeah.
chance, take
Oh,
take something with Jean.
I'll jump on that opportunity. But I spend a lot of time in the ceramic studio, so I always chat with her when I go by, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, can you talk a little bit about your teaching and sort of what direction you, or like specifically what you're teaching and what you kind of most enjoy teaching and how you got into that?
Yeah. So um, I applied for grad school a couple years after leaving CC, and part of getting in my MFA was because I wanted to teach. And I went to CSU and here in Fort Collins. And in the grad program at CSU, you get to teach, you do supervised college teaching. So you TA for one of the professors, and then your advisor, and then you actually get to teach your own class as a graduate teaching assistant. And so I've got some really good experience teaching fibers, which is my focus in grad school at CSU. And then after graduating with my MFA, I got a job teaching fibers at University of Northern Colorado, and started teaching fibers there. And then I also had the opportunity to teach 2D design and drawing at UNC. And then I've been teaching mostly in foundations and fibers, so 2D and drawing. And I've been back at CC and I got to teach 2D there. I've taught fibers at CC, and I've also been teaching at Colorado State where I did my MFA.
Okay, wow. So all over Colorado.
Kind of all over Colorado, yeah. Well, in the Front Range area at least.
Hmm. Well, just specifically to that, do you feel like the Colorado landscape or the Southwest has kind of impacted your work at all?
I am impacted by my environment. But not, I wouldn't say specifically by like a Southwest environment.
Hmm.
More specifically to like what I'm experiencing day to day. So when I was at CSU, there's all this construction up, and I was really interested in even just like the orange fencing, plastic fencing they would put up, things like that. I was walking by every day. And then I have actually hiking at Horsetooth here in Fort Collins. I've been inspired by some of the lichen and some of the bright green kind of textural pieces, and I've used that in my work a little bit, but I wouldn't say that like the mountains have been a big inspiration or something. Like I'm more like up close with what I'm experiencing.
Okay, cool. So in terms of your sort of weaving and fiber arts practice, that's kind of like an independent operation, right? How do you kind of manage that as like sort of an independent, I guess, business? Do you sell your work, or is it mostly
I've been
not?
really bad about doing that. No, my if my like primary income is from teaching, which is really, if you're not, I haven't really been interested in like promoting myself in the way that personally I think I would need to if I wanted to be selling my work and showing in galleries as much more. I really love the process, and I do show my work occasionally, but my as far as my like how I support my work is primarily through teaching.
Okay, gotcha. I guess, yeah, that was a question that sort of has to do with that I was going to ask later, but I might as well ask now, because something that I feel and hear a lot and like amongst art students is this kind of anxiety about after college, and like the kind of stereotype that like, graduating with an art major isn't necessarily like the most financially like forward thinking, or that like you're not setting yourself up financially to be in like a stable position. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious if you have, I mean, you mentioned that like going into being able to teach art is like a good kind of balance to that. But if you have any like pieces of advice or kind of things that you've learned after leaving college as being an artist, how to sort of mitigate that like financial anxiety.
I guess, I mean, there's so many things you can do. So you can work other jobs, you can teach if you have the right degrees to teach, and if you're interested in it. I love teaching, and so it's not like I'm just doing that to support my artwork. It's part of my practice, I would say, as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
But there are lots of jobs in the art world aside from teaching. I worked as a printmaking apprentice and assistant for a couple years before I did grad school, and I don't know, I guess I'm kind of proud that I never actually like went back home after graduating to live at home. I've always been working there. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, and I think every industry you can be anxious about finding a job, but I'm really lucky that I love what I do.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's really nice to hear. I guess just yeah, I think like a lot of, at least for me, like things that I'm thinking are just like most people when they leave undergraduate probably aren't going to be doing their dream job, and so kind of just getting a place in the workforce and then being able to kind of grow from there is at least what I hope to do.
Yeah.
So.
I applied for a few things. I applied for the core program at Penland School of Crafts, and I was really wanting to do that. And I didn't get that, but I did get an internship at Omi Graphics and Steamboat, and I loved it. It was great. I got to make. I wasn't making my own artwork, but I was printing other people's work, and got to use the space after work to do my own artwork in the shop, and it was great. There are tons of internships, tons of jobs that can keep you in the art world.
Oh, that's great to hear. So what have, in terms of, I guess, your education career and your career as a weaver and fiber artist, what have been your most meaningful experiences and maybe the biggest challenges that you've had to confront?
Oh, that's a tough one. I guess getting to work with Jean was probably like the most meaningful experience as a weaver for me. And getting to learn from her at CC, and then I actually TA'd for her after I graduated, and then got to teach with her recently. So it's nice to have connections with other. I mean, I would say Jean's like a master weaver, so like keeping these like kind of generations of weavers together has been really meaningful for me. And challenges, I've been really lucky, I think. It's been well, let's see. I guess with COVID, it was a challenge to teach online. Transitioning from teaching in person to online was a challenge, but challenges are great because you get to learn something new. But overall, I've been really lucky with my trajectory after CC. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's perfect. That's great. All right. So now I guess I'm going to start asking more questions about like your experience at CC, and I guess just like general kind of reflections, or I don't know, you have lots more insight than we do, obviously looking back. I guess I'm wondering I guess, I mean, you've already touched on this a good amount, but kind of some of your key experiences at CC which have shaped your trajectory. Obviously, Jean played a major influence on you and spending a lot of time in the weaving studio. Were there any other kind of aspects of CC that kind of informed, like, I guess, your trajectory and what you wanted to pursue after college?
CC was a huge influence. I loved being there. I loved learning on the block plan. I loved being back and teaching there now. Jean was like my major influence for my whole life, I think. But I also have to say that Kate and Jean Gumper in the printmaking studio were huge influences for me as well. We have amazing professors at CC, and I working at in the printmaking shop led to my internship after at Omi Graphics, and it was great to have a skill that I could take to a job after school.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel so lucky to have all the like faculty there and just like amazing resources and incredible studio spaces. So,
and they're very supportive when you leave too. They brought me back to do I don't remember what I think it might have a formal name now, but I basically came back and helped with one of the printmaking classes and did kind of a small artist residency and worked on my own work in the printmaking studio after school. And then they've been great and inviting me back after I did grad school to teach 2D design and some art education classes as well. They have a lot of faith in their alumni, and they will continue to support you when you leave.
Yeah, I really got that sense because Kate is kind of sort of spearheading this initiative, and just the way that she talks about all the alumni and like us getting to meet them makes me really excited to be able to like finally have these conversations and sort of see the previous generations that have gone through the system. And it's cool. I can definitely tell.
Kate's why I became an art major in general. I would say I took block I guess it would be block 3 like after your FYE. So your first 2 blocks are your FYE?
Yeah.
So block 3 I took drawing, and I declared an art major after that. I was undecided when I came to school. Took drawing with Kate, and I was like, okay, I think I want to do this. I want to continue to work in this department. Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. Sorry, I'm just glancing at my questions. So as you look back, what kind of lessons would you like to pass on to current and future art students? Maybe like something that you wish someone in your profession had told you while you were a student, or just anything that you think is kind of nice to know while we're in college that could make our time there a little more meaningful.
It's so hard because I think everyone's experience is so unique at CC, but I think I wish I had started writing more at CC. You get to write so much in your classes, but I think I was really focused on my visual literacy as an artist, and I think I struggled with and I still struggle to some sense with putting my work into words. And I do think I wish I had started writing more, journaling, or just being able to put some of my visual ideas into words. I think that's a very important part of being an artist, and something that can take a lot of practice. So just starting, even just with some informal writing, can be a great way to get to the point where you can talk about your work and apply to grad school and things like that.
That's really amazing advice, and I've never kind of heard that perspective, so I'm really happy that you shared that. I feel like subconsciously I've been wondering a lot, or like trying, especially during quarantine, like trying to like make myself journal and record like ideas that I have for different projects, and I just like can't really motivate to do it. And then just hearing that makes me feel like there's more of a clear direction and reason, which will like just make me definitely be a little more disciplined about it. And like,
and it doesn't have to be a chore, just even if you do a little bit, and that's not to say that like your process and your visual process isn't just as important. That was my focus, and I think and many students' focus as an artist. But being able to talk about your work is important. as you move forward. And starting now, even if it's just very informal, it's
Totally.
I would recommend it. Yeah.
Do you have any specific advice for people who are interested in pursuing fiber arts after CC, and maybe like just thinking about like kind of career development steps in college, and maybe like in terms of, generating your body of work that you're cataloging, or just anything in particular that might specifically apply to those students?
Sure. Well, photograph your work. That's for everyone. Just photograph everything, because to apply for shows, to apply for scholarships and internships, apprenticeships, residencies, you need photos of your work. And so just photograph everything. And for weaving in particular, like I said, I didn't get that core fellowship that I wanted at Penland, but I did get to take a course there. And there are some really great weaving and fiber arts programs across the country where you can continue to learn new skills and new processes after you leave. And so those craft schools are great for internships and kind of more programs that you can do, like larger programs, but they're also great just to take a quick workshop.
Mm-hmm. I guess, I'm just curious kind of what sort of your work and teaching, how that all kind of shifted during COVID and during quarantine, and how you sort of had to adapt to that. I know like you showed us your loom in your house, so obviously that's something that you could continue to do, but if you would just kind of share a little bit about what that experience was like, that'd be
that
great.
was it was it's so hard for the studio practices. So I have a loom, like I showed you my loom, and but my students don't have looms at home. And so I was teaching weaving at Colorado State, and I was teaching 5 courses of fiber arts. And so I had to transition those online. And that was a challenge because not everyone has a loom at home, and that's not something I can send home with my students. So let me grab my frame loom. I've got everything here, but we, oh man, it was a challenge. So we sent everyone home with a frame loom like this. So I learned how to weave on a frame loom with Jean as well. She did a really cool thing that you can only do at CC, where she took us on a field trip to the botanic gardens. Maybe that's where my plant interest has come from as well. Where we just wove in the botanic gardens with those frame looms. So I had to teach beginning weavers who had never woven before how to weave without a loom, basically. And so we sent them home with frame looms like this, and I did YouTube videos basically to teach, which was a cool experience. I got to learn how to do all of that. And it worked out pretty well. It's a really meditative practice. And so I think it was something that my students really enjoyed doing during this really stressful time. It's work that you want to do and that makes you feel good, or makes me feel good. And it was nice to be able to, it was actually really cool because not everyone has a loom, like I was saying. And it's not like a piece of equipment that you can just get right after you graduate. Wow. Or not everyone can. And so being able to teach on a frame loom, that's actually something that everyone can take with them. And you can take it anywhere, and you can weave while you're hiking or at the botanic gardens or at home. You don't have to have a big studio space.
Props to you. That sounds like probably the hardest class to be able to teach remotely.
I think ceramics would have been harder. Yeah. We could make a loom for everyone, but you can't necessarily like make a at-home kiln, I don't think.
That's true.
But it was I was not looking forward to teaching online, but it turned into something that I enjoyed doing. and I was really proud of my students. They just excelled with the little bit of resources we were able to give them in a really hard time. So it was a good experience, and I think I can take some of those lessons that I developed for working at home for students in the future, that because life happens, even if we're all at have access to the studio, sometimes the student has to stay home for whatever reason. And so I now have some, I think, decent curriculum that I can apply in those situations as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. Thank you so much.